Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me for day 2 of the Christmas card series. So for today's card, I'm going to be using the Christmas Scenes stencil, and I've already applied it to the card front. I'm going to be using 3 distress inks to create the sky, as that's the backdrop of my card, and I'm starting with Dusty Concord. And then I'll be transitioning into Faded Jeans. And then lastly, I'll be using my favorite distress ink color, which is Peacock Feathers. So I'm just applying it, being careful not to lift up my snowbank stencil from the Christmas Scene stencil set. And then I am now blending in some of these other colors in order to create my nighttime sky. So after doing the first round of each color, I found it was very blotchy. I guess my ink distress tool blending technique is not the greatest. So you'll see me go back in and apply a little bit more ink. I think my applicator was a little bit too dry and I wasn't getting the blending and saturation that I wanted because there wasn't enough ink on the page. So I go through and again blend in some more of the Dusty Concord and the blue. And the blues, I should say. So once I'm done blending in all of these colors, I am going to start applying water to activate the distress ink. I wanted to have a little bit of texture and interest in the night sky, so I will be using my fingers to just sprinkle on some additional water, which will activate the ink and give it these little splotches. It's a little bit harder to see the splotches at this point, but in the final picture you see the detail that it adds to the night sky. So after a few minutes you can really start to see that the water has added to that effect on the distress ink. And now I'm just using the negative space of the stencil to kind of give my snowbanks a little bit of definition. So I've just pasted the stencil down or taped the stencil down, and I'm using my Peacock Feathers ink distress tool with no ink applied to just kind of add a little bit of color, very minute amount of color, just to give definition to the snowbanks and make them look a little bit more white by adding some color to them. It's odd, but it does appear, it does work. Next, I'm going to use Ranger Texture Paste, and I'm going to be using the Falling Stars stencil from Simon Says Stamp to add some stars to my night sky. So I've kind of picked the middle of the stencil where the gradient of stars is tapering off towards the end, and I am just going to apply the texture paste over the stars, being careful not to get any on my snowbank. I guess I could have left my snowbank stencil in place and placed this over top to ensure that, but being careful seemed to work as well. And because I want the stars to be really smooth and even, I'm taking care to wipe off as much of the texture paste as possible to keep them pretty much flat with the stencil. So once I pull that off, I'll put it aside to dry. And now I'm going to use the Merry Trees Simon Says stamp set in order to add the trees that I'm adding to my snowbank as well as the sentiment. So for the tree, I stamped it down using Simon Says Stampin' Up, Pear Piaz, and now I inked it down once and then I inked the edges and stamped it down a second time. I think it would have been easier to just ink the entire surface and then use a dry cloth to wipe out the middle and then stamped it a second time. I also am stamping the other 2 trees from this stamp set using the same ink. And then I'm going to fussy cut them and get them cut out. So now I'm getting my sentiment, which is "May your Christmas be merry and bright," and I've used my my embossing buddy to ensure that I don't get any static cling. I stamped it down, and now I'm going to use a silver embossing powder. It's something I've had for so long. I have no idea what brand it is, but it is ideal. I love the gloss that you get off this embossing powder, and it is very bright. So now I'm just doing my placement. Now that my falling stars have had time to dry, I am placing them onto my backdrop, and I adhered them with foam tape. Now I wanted to take my card base and add a little bit of the same embossing powder to the bottom and top edges in order to give the card a glossy shine, which you'll see above and below the scene that I've created. So once I hit that with my embossing gun, you get a nice shimmer at the tops and bottoms, and then I use my ATG gun to place my card front onto the card back. And that pretty much is the card for today. It had a couple different elements in it, but the distress ink really was the focus and created a beautiful night sky for this Christmas card. So I want to thank everybody for watching my Christmas card series, and there are still 10 more days to go. Thanks for watching. Bye.